I guess I will start with the consent agenda and the whole thing with the pool. I guess first I just take your thoughts on the discussion that was had and where we are and where we're headed.
Go ahead.
Well, I think the council really definitely wants to move the pool project forward, and I think that's been loud and clear. It was actually loud and clear the other night. I think Steve McSwain's comments represent some thoughts and conversations that have been going on for a little while here in terms of hitting the pause button and maybe making it a bigger project, waiting to see what Marshfield Utilities comes up with and their plans for expansion. Are they going to build onto their current site or move to another site? So I think his comments were good in the sense that I think he wants it to be the best possible project for the city for, decades to come. But I think what you saw was sort of the overwhelming consensus that, we've waited for utilities and they're still not decided on their plans. We've looked at the idea of trying to make it a bigger project, but I think at this point, everybody's excited to move forward with a new municipal aquatic facility.
Yeah, I would agree with that 100%. And the interesting thing too is Steve and I both came on to the council at the same time. And so many of the other council members were actually members of the pool committee that invested countless hours into where this should be. And, if they really would have made the recommendation a couple of years ago that it should be slightly different or whatever, that really would have been done. So to come into the 11th hour, I think that's why you saw the council make I thought, crystal clear decision that they did. No, let's move forward. We hear what you're saying, and you have every right to do it, but we're pretty clear we need to get this pool going. And again, I think it gets back to the experience of the council, because once you start throwing in delays and everything else, after it's already been, gone about, then that's where it's easy to kick a project out. And we certainly respect the utility, and they have to do what is right for them. They have to make that decision, but we can't put our plans on hold because of that. So I'm very confident that the pool's going to work out great, and the utility will find their way to do what's right for them to benefit everybody.
And I think not only the delay in time, but I think that some of the things that have been batted about could have required more land being needed, some street improvements, and it would have run up the tab as well. And I'm not sure the full council had an appetite for a greater expense than we've already committed to. Some do, and I think some would like to see us look at some other ideas. But in the end, I think the desire to move this project forward has been on the docket for so many years, and to get a good new municipal aquatic facility for our residents was too strong to delay any farther.
And this isn't a final absolute plan, correct? That will be coming out of this?
Well, there's not even a specifically adopted design at this point. There's conceptual drawings we've seen. I think what we're looking at right now is we were sitting at a stoplight. The light is now green, and I think everybody wants to move forward. We have a fundraising team excited to get out there and do some capital campaign work. We have now, with that item you mentioned in the consent agenda, authorized heirs to work on the design and related services for the pool. It's kind of an all systems to go approach. There's going to have to be more discussion with the council. I'm sure you'll see this item come back. But I think we just took the pause button off and decided to move forward.
And this contract you guys signed wouldn't necessarily preclude an expansion of the project to something more like Alderman McSwain was talking about, right?
No, not necessarily. We can always take a look farther, and there's been some discussion about other things in terms of road improvements and whatnot. I don't think it totally rules it out, but it does suggest that we are going down the road to build this pool at its present location effectively, with the design coming out and the exact placement yet to be determined, but without getting wrapped up in, and this is no disrespect to Marshfield Utilities, we have great respect for it, but without waiting 9 months or more to hear what they want to do with their building plans, or delaying for any other particular reason. The residents have waited a long time, I think, for this upgrade.
Also in that same consent agenda, there's a bid approved for the Cougar Exhibit and Welcome Center, but there was it looked like it was higher, the cost was higher than originally anticipated. Is there a particular reason the cost went up, or?
Well, you know, we had, if you looked at the memo from Justin Casperson, our Park and Recreation Director, we had several bids. You know, Marwitz was the best, but even taking some stuff out, we were still over budget. And that's what it took, you know, some money, I think $90,000 from room tax funds to get it done. You know, it's funny on bid for street projects too. You know, we do bid assessments, we do good analysis, and then maybe the appetite is not that great from some of the contractors, maybe their plates are full. In this case, maybe we undersold it in terms of the expected cost. We would want to have seen it come down lower and not had to do some tweaking in the plan. But I guess at the end of the day, it is what it is, and we found a way using some room tax fund balance to get it done.
Okay.
It'll be a great improvement for the zoo, it really will.
Yep. You had first reading the ordinance to create a new communications committee. Can you walk us through the process and when you expect to have that meeting?
Expect to have which
Like
meeting?
the first meeting of the communications committee. I'm assuming there's another reading of the ordinance in 2 weeks, and then you have to go through the process of appointing members. So are we looking August probably, or?
August 1st is probably a good bet, by the time
Right.
we get the ordinance approved on June 25th, and then get some members on board. You know, it might be late July, that'd be great, but I would say August 1st is probably the target.
I'm looking through the rest of this before I get some of the other stuff. 2020 budget calendar. More in general, where are we at with the budget, and when can people start expecting to see a little more of that rolling forward?
I'll start, and feel free to jump in, Bob. I mean, we're still early in the process. At staff level, it really kicks off next Wednesday, the 19th of June, with a meeting with the finance director, me, and other people who will be working on the budget, where we go through the instructions. And it's going to be a different type of budget process. On the 25th, Ron Allman, our finance director, is going to outline it for the council. Because of some of the constraints we have right now and some of the issues we're facing, we're going to do something that we've talked about doing before anyway, but now is the opportune time to do it for sure. And that's to do a build-up budget. So in the past, what we've had is all the budgets have been submitted, Steve Barr gets together, he takes a look at it. Well, we're $2.5 million over what we can afford. Steve starts making some notes, maybe some cuts, meets with the department heads individually and collectively. We got to get this pared down to a viable number. What we're doing this time is saying, look, it's going to be tighter than that. We're going to start by building a base budget, if you will. We're going to start with this year at a very slight inflationary factor, you know, a percent or whatever, because supplies go up, fuel goes up or whatever, and then put in the CIP things that we've agreed to do in the CIP process, you know, 8 or 9 projects for 2020, and you know, cost of living, increased wages, and then see what that looks like. And then we're going to come to the council in August and say, okay guys, right now with what we've done, nothing more than minimal inflation and doing what we've done last year, we are at whatever percent increase. And based upon revenue increases, we think that we'll be able to do it with a limited tax increase or no tax increase or whatever it is, and then get a sense of how far the council is willing to go. Now, if it turns out that that number is not good at all, we may still be cutting. We may say, you know what, even with that minimal inflation, we're going to be at 1.8%, and even with extended revenue, the tax rate increase would still be this. We may be still trimming from there. But that will be, here's what I'm calling this year's government at next year's prices. No new services, no new programs, no new staff. And that will be our moment where we get a chance in August. And that'll be good for the council to look at this in mid-August for the first time, well ahead of the crunch time, and say, well, it looks like we've got a little extra room to add things that the department heads need, or, hey, I think this might have to be it, or wherever it lands.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting process, and I really like the way that they are doing it this year. With let's start with our base and build up. I think it's a great way to do it. We've done a few different financial things this year with the way we did the CIP. That was changed, and it went very smooth. I mean, city staff did a great job there. This year with the budget, of course, we've got the variables. We know that we're starting off in a bit of a hole because of the issue that we had that I believe has now been cleared up, but we still have the hole. But we've also, sold the building, and there have been some other things in there. So it's going to be a very interesting process. I learned last year, being my first year, is to wait for the process to be through. Because during the process of it going up and down, I remember Steve calling me last year that things are looking really, really good, and then I got a phone call a couple of days and when we had the street deal that came down from the state that was less, and that had to be adjusted and all this. And initially there was when he put out the max we could go would be 4.5, and that's kind of all people heard, and that was, we were never gonna do it. It was just, there's your differential. We really have to be patient and see this through to what it actually comes out to, because I think there's gonna be ups and downs with it.
Yeah, I agree, and we still have some things to wait for from the state. The governor put out a budget that was very favorable to municipalities in terms of increases for shared revenue, transportation aid, and those kind of things. And then the initial read from Joint Finance was not very favorable. I understand they've come back a little bit. The last thing I've seen from Joint Finance Committee is that they are willing to do at least some increase in transportation aid, which is helpful, maybe some other revenue enhancements. But those numbers need to come in from the state as well. And in mid-August, we get the information on our assessed value changes from last year. So where are we looking at in terms of the tax base to spread the taxes upon? So it comes together over time. And let me even say too, as far as that gap we've been talking about in the annual budget, we've been working hard to mitigate this. Ron's got a lot of things going with some restructuring of debt. We found in one case that we haven't been allocating enough money to the EMS portion of what goes on down there at the station. It's been too much on the fire side. Well, EMS is a big part of what happens, and some of the costs should be divvied up a little bit differently. And we're not doing this to be opportunists or something. It probably has never been done right in terms of how those costs are allocated between fire and EMS. And EMS is an enterprise fund. It's self-sustaining. So it's a lot of things we're looking at, along with cost cutting and other opportunities. Let me add what that item was about on the agenda specifically. Now that we've changed things to say that the Upham Mansion and Macy and all these people need to compete for budget funds with departments, instead of automatically getting their annual allocations. Now it's going to be a case of where we want to hear from them in advance. Okay, come before us. You want us to give you $7,500 to keep up the Upham Mansion. Tell us what you're doing. Tell us why that money is significant to you. How is our assistance going to help keep it sustained? Do you have other revenue sources coming in? Same thing with other requests coming from other places, to make sure that we're treating people outside of this building with the same level of scrutiny that we do our department heads. Not that we haven't before, but I think we've kept the same kind of things going in the budget for a lot of people. Not a lot, a few. And we want to be, looking at what are the best uses of our funds, broadly speaking.
Would there be any plans in the future of maybe delegating that to a committee, or is it going forward, is that always going to be a council decision?
That really hasn't been brought up. It's been, right now, this is a time for everybody to come back so that the playing field is fair, to come back to the council to make the request. And I think for right now, that's probably the best way to go about it. Could there be a committee down the road that does that? Sure. But even then, that would have to go back to council for approval. And so, would we ever rule it out? No, but that's not what we'll be doing this year.
I think the policy we adopted in December is going to help us a lot.
I do too.
Before you were on board, in fact, just as you were coming on board, we had that whole thing with PDC. And that was, a difficult one for the city, because PDC is a very worthwhile organization, and they serve women in crisis, domestic violence. I mean, that's an important issue. And yet the council had to come to grips with, as important an issue as it is it a city of Marshfield issue, or is it a county, concern, or is it somebody else? And that's what we intend to do with this, is say, great, your organization does good stuff. Is it really a city issue? And I think the policy is going to help us. The policy talks about, does it pertain to other services we currently provide? And PDC could make the argument that it ties to police services. Okay, great. How does it help us further our mission? Those are the kind of questions that we'll be asking, whether it's a separate committee or the full council.
Right. I guess, was there a vote on any of the closed session items?
Only the maps item, and that is fairly housekeeping. In talking with the MAPS representatives, they're very close to getting this project off the ground, but they found something in the agreement that wasn't quite right, and it involved the reimbursement amount and how it was being done. And so I talked to Bill Hiding, and we agreed on a better way to do it. And what's going to happen is rather than have them pay for the full land cost and then we reimburse them a portion and say, look, you got a donation of land in part, we're just going to say, look, you pay us the full amount that you owe for the land, the way you would have if you bought it for industrial purposes, and we'll give you the amount that we promised once upon a time to give toward the project. So there's none of this math that's being done in there. It's a straight up, you pay for the land, and we pay what we talked about 2 years ago to assist with the project. And so it was pretty simple. The council came out in open session and said, yeah, let's go. And I understand MAPS is ready to go, hopefully within, starting this summer.
Yep,
So that'll be exciting for the community.
absolutely. Yeah, that finishes up the agenda. Couple other little things. Any updates on the budget effects from the TID issue?
Well, today in this very room, I think it is, at 1 o'clock, we're meeting with the Joint Review Board, and we'll hear whether the county, school board, tech college, and those folks are concerned about what's happened. I don't suspect they will be, because at the end of the day, no matter how we were doing it, they know that they're going to be made whole. I mean, it's like the old pay me now or pay me later thing from the mechanics commercials they used to run. You saw maybe one thing come out of it the other night. We changed financial advisors. We've left PFM and we'll be going with Ellers out of the Brookfield area. But other than that, to really get at your question, I mean, I think that there's, the next time we go to borrow, we might get questions from Moody's. Every time when we borrow money, we have a conference call, and Moody's says, well, what's your reserve balance? Well, what's your financial outlook? The topic will come up. They'll see that the transfers have been made, and they'll say, you transferred a lot of money both ways recently. What does that mean? And can bondholders feel comfortable about the rating you have today? Currently, we have a AA3 rating, and it's a pretty good rating, and they want to make sure that they can maintain that for us. Other than that, I think we've kind of worked through the transfers. Now we've got to work through the budget issues, and we go from there.
And then, actually, Kaylin at this exact moment is down in the wastewater meeting with Sam, talking about the whole phosphorus issue. Do you guys have any background on what the stormwater side, because that's directly under city purview, right? That falls under public works?
It is, and I think Tom Turchi might have given us an update not too long ago about it. It's complicated. First of all, I want to commend our wastewater folks on the great job they've done on the phosphorus issue, and the way they found a creative way to treat it that was way less expensive than a lot of cities have looked at. But I'm not closely familiar with how the stormwater is going to play out. I just know that when it comes from the state and federal government, it usually means we're going to spend money. I mean, typically.
Yeah.
Maybe.
And I did notice there's a lot of money in the CIP over the next few years for that.
Yeah, and some of that is without knowing exactly what it's going to cost. It's kind of a best guess. But, we've been blessed. A few years ago, there was talk about extending stormwater regulations to cities our size, just in general. Stormwater quality and stormwater management. And then they kind of decided to back off on that. I hope that isn't coming back around the bend, because that, for smaller cities, treating stormwater is a challenge at best.
Okay, and then we can go all the way back up to the top, because obviously there was a little fun at the beginning of the meeting, getting to, congratulate the Marshfield girls soccer team. First off, are either of you heading to Milwaukee after this?
No, I was just, I've been thinking about it, but I can't, unfortunately. Across the street at Holiday Inn was the send-off, and they had police officers and fire trucks, and we got a chance to speak to some of the parents that were out there, and they're all very excited. So it's a very cool thing, that it's never before has a girls soccer team from Marshfield gone to the state finals. So it was just very cool to see.
Yeah, I've got a commitment here tonight too of something else, but let me say this. One of the things that makes this a great community is being able to do that at council meetings. Whether it's someone, the team is going to the state girls tournament, or the people who are going to the Special Olympics, or, recognizing someone. Oftentimes we have a stewardship award or something that we recognize a member of the community who's done something exemplary. That is a cool part of our meetings, when you get a chance to do that and thank people and commend them for their accomplishments.
Yeah, it was, when we heard that they won their sectional final and they were going, I was going by Jeff Moulter's house and I saw him out there and I just stopped and pulled in. I think it kind of scared him. And he was very excited about it. And Jeff and I, we both coached, and so I can only imagine what he is going through, and Lucky and Steve McCann. And I did say, it'd be great for you to come just so you could see the cities behind you as well as the fountains. And today when I was out here at Holiday Inn, some people came up and they loved it, and one of the ladies there is taking 10 kids from this area on a mission for 2 weeks. And I told her, boy, when you get back, we sure would we'd love to have you come to council and just give us a couple minutes under public comments on what you've done. Because I think we can start showing, life isn't all rosy, but it's nice to show some of the great things going on here. And that was just fun to see. The girls were excited, coaches were excited. I've never seen Lucky and Jeff that nervous before. But it was fun.
Yeah, that's one of the things that makes a community and not just a place where you live, is when you can celebrate those things collectively.
All right, that's all I have.
All right. It's a wrap. Thanks,
That's a
Steve.
wrap, yeah.
Yeah.